Hello, Nelson and I are two students in wildlife ecology and conservation at UF, and today we will be presenting control methods for brown tree snakes on the island of Guam. So the brown tree snake is an invasive species on the island of Guam, and it has caused significant damage to Guam's economy and ecosystem. It causes power outages by getting stuck in power lines, it discourages tourism, and it has decimated many of Guam's native bird and mammal populations. So here we'll be reviewing three control methods that are currently being used on Guam to prevent the spread and movement of these snakes.
So for method one, we're going to be looking over exclusion barriers. These are man-made barriers made out of a variety of materials. They prevent herpetofauna, in this case, brown tree snakes, from passing through any restricted areas. Some pros of using exclusion barriers is they're extremely effective from preventing brown tree snakes from passing through one restricted area to the next. And the barriers can be applied to various landscape sizes. Some cons is setting up the barriers themselves is time consuming. They must be constantly maintained. And with being in Guam, being exposed to constant storms, it's very relatively easy for them to be destroyed. So for method number two, we're going to be looking over toxic baiting. For this case, in brown tree snakes, the toxic baiting is deceased rodents filled with acetaminophen, which is found within Tylenol and other aspirins. Some pros of using acetaminophen and toxic baiting is it is highly versatile in the ways you can distribute it, especially being in Guam, being a very dense forest. You can use the toxic baits in aerial distribution, PCV pipes, or traps laid throughout Guam. Some cons to this is aerial broadcasting is very caution efficient and relatively expensive to buy the pellets themselves. It is extremely risky to send out a biologist and a pilot to fly that low above the Guam canopy. And it is extremely time consuming when it comes to the initial loading of rodents with acetaminophen. So for our final method, we're going to be reviewing detection dogs. Detection dogs are highly skilled, trained dogs that have been taught to locate a specific species through their olfactory senses. For some pros, they are extremely accurate in finding the brown tree snake within the dense forest of Guam. A second pro is they have an increased radius and detection rate compared to humans when it comes to finding brown tree snakes in Guam. Some cons, though, is that it's controversial to use detection dogs as brown tree snakes are venomous and could, in fact, injure a dog, not necessarily life-threatening injuries, but nothing that a wildlifer would want to encounter. Another con is they are time-consuming to initially train the dogs to locate brown tree snakes. And final con is they need to be taken care of, as you cannot just force a dog to work. You have to provide a living means for food and water.
So our recommendation is to continue with aerial toxic baiting, as it has the highest versatility with distributing the baits across the entire island. Detection dogs and exclusion barriers are much harder to set up in remote areas where researchers cannot reach. And so it is much better to use aerial baiting if you want to reach the entire island. The graph below shows the high frequency with aerial baits are taken. Over 60% of the baits were taken by an animal, and 90% of the animals that take it are brown tree snakes, meaning that not a lot of non-target species are taking the baits due to where they're placed in the trees. You can also see that hand-placed toxic baits are less likely to be taken by an animal compared to aerial bait drops. In addition, there seems to be no secondhand intoxication as mentioned. There's no evidence that suggests that there's poisoning across trophic levels, so that's not an issue that needs to be worried about. Aside from this, strict enforcement of laws regarding importation and exportation, regular checks of cargo, which is how the snake got there in the first place, are all important ways that we can reduce the spread of the brown tree snake on Guam and limit their impact on the environment and economy there. So our references are listed below. You can check those out if you want to. And thank you for watching.